I never used to believe in coincidences. I used to think that everything had an explanation if you just looked hard enough. That was before I took the night job at the Sea Cliff Motel, before I found the body, before I looked into a dead man's face and saw something that should have been impossible. I'd been on the road for 3 months, backpacking up the coast, sleeping in my car, picking up odd jobs wherever I could, when I saw the handwritten sign in the window of a tired-looking motel on the edge of a cliff. I didn't think twice. Night clerk needed, accommodation provided. It was late autumn, the tourist season long dead, and the town was one of those half-forgotten places where the air always smells of salt and rust, the kind of place where the streetlights flicker and nobody bothers to fix them. The motel itself was a long, low building, paint peeling in long curls, a flickering neon sign that buzzed so loudly you could hear it from the parking lot. My room was at the end of the corridor on the ground floor, a narrow box with a single window that looked out onto the beach, miles of gray sand and dune grass, and beyond that, the cold, indifferent ocean. The isolation didn't bother me. I told myself I liked the quiet, but from the very first night, I knew there was something wrong with that beach. It was too silent, not peaceful silent, watchful silent. The kind of quiet that makes the hairs on your arms stand up, even when you don't know why. Sometimes, when I stood at the window during my breaks, I'd see a shape near the tide line. Far away, just a smear of shadow. I'd blink and it would be gone. I told myself it was driftwood, a trick of the light. I was good at telling myself things like that. My shift started at 11 p.m. and ended at 7 in the morning. The motel was nearly empty, only 2 rooms occupied, both by long-haul truckers who left before dawn. Most nights I just sat behind the front desk, scrolling through my phone or reading cheap paperbacks from the lobby shelf. It was on the 4th night that everything changed. It was just after 3 a.m. I remember the time because the clock on the wall had stopped, its hands frozen at 307, and I'd made a mental note to fix it. The lobby was silent except for the buzzing neon and the distant rhythm of the waves. I got up to stretch my legs, and as I passed the window, I saw it. A figure, much closer this time, not a smear, a man, standing at the edge of the water, utterly still, facing the sea. He was wearing a coat, just a shirt and trousers, and his posture was strange, too straight, too rigid, like someone posing for a photograph. I watched him for a long moment, waiting for him to move. He didn't. A cold, creeping unease settled into my chest, the kind you can't rationalize away. I grabbed my jacket and stepped outside. The wind hit me immediately, cold and sharp, carrying the smell of damp sand and something else, something stale and faintly sweet, like wilting flowers. "Hey," I called out, but my voice was swallowed by the wind. "You okay out there?" No response. The figure remained motionless. As I got closer, details sharpened. He was leaning back slightly, his head tilted, one arm tucked awkwardly behind him. It looked almost relaxed, except his eyes were open, wide open, and in the dim glow of the motel sign, I could see that his skin was the color of old wax. He was dead, had been dead for hours. I called the police with shaking hands. 2 officers arrived, just as the sky began to lighten, turning the ocean from black to bruised purple. They were calm, professional, but I saw the way they exchanged glances when they looked at the body. The dead man was in his 40s, clean-shaven, well-dressed in a suit that seemed decades out of fashion. No wallet, no identification. The pockets of his trousers were empty, except for one thing. One of the constables, a tired-eyed man named Beckett, pulled a scrap of paper from a hidden seam inside the man's waistband, a secret pocket, neatly stitched, as if it had been sewn there deliberately. The paper was worn, yellowed at the edges. Printed on it were just 2 words, Tamám Shud. I didn't know what it meant then. The officers didn't either. They took the body away, and I went back to my room, but I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing those open eyes, that rigid posture, the way the waves had lapped at his shoes without him flinching. And that phrase, Tamam Shud, turning over and over in my mind like a stone. I did what anyone would do. I searched for it online. It's Persian, from the end of a poem in the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. It means finished or ended. The search led me deeper into one of the most famous unsolved mysteries in the world. In 1948, a man was found dead on Somerton Beach in Australia in almost exactly the same circumstances. No ID, a secret pocket, a scrap of paper reading Tamam Shud, a code found in a book connected to him that nobody has ever deciphered. I read article after article, my mouth dry, my heart thudding in my ears. The similarities were impossible to ignore, down to the positioning of the body, the hidden pocket, the clothing that seemed just slightly off. I told myself it was some kind of macabre tribute, a copycat. But what kind of copycat kills himself to replicate an 80-year-old mystery on a deserted beach? And why here? Why outside my motel? That was the first night the whispering started. It was just after 2 a.m., the following shift. I was sitting behind the desk, and I heard it. A voicino, not a voice, more like the shape of a voice, just below the threshold of understanding. It seemed to come from the corridor that led to the empty rooms. I got up, checked every door. Nothing. When I came back to the desk, the computer screen had changed. The search I'd been running on the Somerton man case was still open, but the page had scrolled down to a black and white photograph of the dead man from 1948, and I froze, because the face in that photograph, the high forehead, the set of the jaw, the faint asymmetry of the lips, was the face of the man I'd found on the beach. It was him, identical, impossible, but identical. I slammed the laptop shut. I told myself I was tired, stressed, that my mind was playing tricks, but the whispering didn't stop. It got louder. It followed me to my room, a soft, sibilant sound just outside the window. And when I finally gathered the courage to look through the glass, I saw him, the dead man, standing at the edge of the parking lot, still wearing the same outdated suit, still perfectly motionless. But this time, his head was turned towards me. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I called Constable Beckett. I asked about the body. His voice was strange when he answered. The body, he said, had disappeared from the morgue, vanished sometime in the early hours, with no sign of forced entry. The security footage from the corridor showed nothing but static for a full hour. He asked me if I'd seen anything unusual. I wanted to tell him everything, the whispering, the figure, the photograph, but the words wouldn't come. They sounded insane even inside my own head. That afternoon, I did something desperate. I went back to the beach where I'd found him. The tide had erased any footprints, but near the dune grass, half buried in sand, I found a small, leather-bound book. My fingers trembled as I picked it up. It was a copy of the Rubaiyat, old, battered, the spine cracked. Inside the back cover, in faint pencil, was a sequence of letter S, a code, indecipherable at first glance, but I recognized the format from my research. It matched the code found in the 1948 case, and beneath the letters, a single line was written in a neat, unfamiliar hand. It ends where it began. I dropped the book as if it had burned me. When I looked up, a figure was standing on the cliff path above the motel, far away, but unmistakable. The same suit, the same stillness, watching. I should have left then, packed my bag, driven as far as the highway would take me. But something kept me there, something that felt less like curiosity and more like a trap, slowly closing. That evening, the motel phone rang. Room 104, the room directly next to mine, was calling the front desk. But room 104 was empty, had been empty all week. I picked up the receiver with a cold dread already coiling in my stomach. Hello? Silence. Then a slow, labored breath. And a voice faint, mechanical, like a recording played through water-whispered a string of letters. The code, the exact sequence from the book, spoken in the dead man's voice. I dropped the phone and ran to room 104. The door was ajar. The room was dark, the curtains drawn, and on the bed, laid out neatly as if for a funeral, was a suit. The suit, dated, dark, faintly scented with something stale and sweet, and pinned to the lapel was a note, one word, written in the same hand as the book, soon. That's when I understood. Not everything, never everything, but enough. The man on the beach hadn't been a stranger. He was a previous iteration, a version of me, or what I would become. I don't know how, I don't know why, but the code, the book, the body, they weren't clues to a murder. They were instructions, a warning. The cycle doesn't end, it just changes hands. I tried to leave that night. I packed my car, hands fumbling, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. But as I pulled out of the parking lot, the headlights swept across the beach access path, and there he was, not one figure now, two, standing side by side, identical in every way, faces pale as bone in the high beams, and behind them, barely visible in the mist, a third shape, slighter, still forming. I slammed the accelerator. The tires skidded on wet asphalt, and the last thing I saw in my rearview mirror was one of the figures raising a hand, not in threat, in farewell. I've been driving for 3 days now. I don't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I hear that whispered code, those letters that feel like they're carving themselves into the inside of my skull. This afternoon, I stopped at a diner and caught my reflection in the window. My face looked wrong, the jawline sharper, the set of the mouth unfamiliar, him starting to resemble him, or maybe I always did, and there's a secret pocket in the lining of my jacket. I didn't sew it there, but it's there now. Inside it, I found a fresh scrap of paper, crisp and white, as if it had just been torn from a book. 2 words, Tamám Shud. Underneath, in my own handwriting, a single line, pass it on. I'm not telling you this to warn you. I'm telling you because I have no choice, because I think that's how the code works. It's a message that must be passed, and now you've heard it, now you know. Maybe you'll see a figure on a beach one night, standing too still, watching the water. Maybe you'll find a book you don't remember buying. Maybe you'll check your pockets and find a scrap of paper that wasn't there before. And when you read the words, you'll understand the cycle never ended. It just found a new beginning. Pause. The static swells, then cuts abruptly. A single wave crashes and recedes into silence.